Welcome to this webinar. My name is Pasi Ahola, and today with me there's Andrea Lundqvist as well. And here you can see the agenda for today's webinar. And yeah, let's get started. So first, a bit of intro of Taipova Consulting. Our company was founded almost exactly 12 years ago, and our mission has been to help Nordic companies to improve the efficiency of R&D and related processes. And we do that by offering expertise to improve the ways of working in organizations, as well as process industry knowledge. For example, how to comply and to be agile at the same time in the R&D, and how to take the regulatory aspects into account in very practical manner. And we offer digital tools and solutions and services on those as well. And I think we have been quite successful in doing that, helping a lot of companies. And here you can see some of the organizations that we have been working with. Now let's get to the introductions of today's presenters. So yes, my name is Pasi Ahola. I'm a CEO, founder, and acting also as a lead consultant here at Taipova. My background has many positions in product and software development, and in the course of my career, I have advised several companies in the medical device and IVD industry. And I would now like to hand it over to Andrea.
Yes, my name is Andrea, and I work at Taipova as an R&D process consultant. I have a master degree in medical engineering from KTH, and before I started here at Taipova, I worked as a quality and regulatory affairs consultant in health tech, and I've worked with both medical devices, IVD products, and combination devices, so all types of medical device equipment. And before that, I worked as a developer at Bold Medical, and that's where I first got in contact with the Taipova and Polarion as well.
All right.
So that's a short background from us. Now let's talk a bit about the regulations. We all know that the medical device industry is a regulated industry, and that requires a lot of documentation. I actually spoke to a friend of mine the last week who was like, all I do at work is documentation, and he has just started working at a medical device company. And studies shows that about 70% of a medical development project is actually documentation. And if this documentation is done manually, about 20 to 25% of the total project time is actually to just ensure the traceability of all the documentation, all the way from the implementation and the actual product to the risk and requirement management and verification and validation. So it's a lot of time that goes to documentation and traceability in the documentation as well. And the actual regulations and standards that we talk about in this medical device industry, probably you recognize most of them, at least the ones that you work with. The new medical device and IVD regulations, maybe they're not so new anymore because it was 5 years ago they came, but these regulations takes a lot of it talks a lot more about the risk management. And just a quick example, in the MDD, the directive that we had before this regulation, they mentioned the word risk 42 times. In the medical device regulation, the MDR, they mentioned it 243 times. So it's a huge difference how much they talk about the risk management. I saw that someone didn't hear us. Do anyone hear me, or am I speaking to no one? Great. The rest of the standards, I think you Yeah, you've seen them. You probably work with them a lot. And if we look a bit more into the cybersecurity, we can see that in FDA, they have taken this approach to it. And these are the standards that are used in FDA for the cybersecurity part, which is kind of new and up and coming, I would say. In the EU, they have taken another approach, I would say. From May 2024, we have these standards to be aware of and take action to. And as we can see, basically, these standards just help us to follow another standard for industrial automation and control systems. So we need to comply with those basically in the medical device industry as well. Then, of course, we have the GDPR. We all know about it, I hope. And we do have this new NIS2 directive that is that all the essential and important organization needs to comply to in 2024 as well. At Tepriva, we do have some work done about this as well. But if you have questions, just ask us. But now let's focus on the risk management part.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. Well, let's do a small poll at this point. So here's a question that we would like to you to answer very quickly. Roope will put the questions there in the Teams, and you will find it in your meeting chat, or there is a pop-up in your screen to answer this. So let's see if we get some responses. Yeah, now we see that there are some responses coming up. Yeah, 20 responses. Maybe you see the real-time situation as well. So, and as we go, now we see that in the risk management area, the winning methodology seems to be spreadsheet and Excel at the moment. 33 responses, and yes, I think we can see take the final result from here. Just one more, and yes, we have a winner. Excel 55%, and then we have a runner-up, quality management containing risk management with 17%, and then in the third place we have our risk management software. All right. Typically we could maybe talk about this result when we go a bit further. We see that the regulations and standard result in requirements to product development and risk management for three aspects, and we can talk about content structure and process and traceability. And let's see how these requirements actually fall into these categories. So let's first talk about the content structure. I guess most of the people online are aware of this standard and the kind of the methodology or the structure that it sort of sets forth. If we look at the traditional Excel approach, or kind of an example of how the content can be defined in a table-like format, we see that these different things fall into place quite nicely, and we see a mapping between these different things. And for example, here's the initial risk assessment. And if we have an Excel approach, then this table goes on to the right, and there are some more things which are also in place, and this is really the content that needs to be there, that we need to define on the different risks. And what is then required of the process is that here are some most important things that affect their risk management. Of course, these come from the quality management standards and so forth. But yes, having a defined process, which means workflow to do things, and to have a controlled design reviews with documentation approvals, change control, and so forth. And these all mean that also the risk management documentation needs to be frozen from time to time. And the controls on changes is very rigid after some design review points. So it makes the process a bit more stiff, and there's nothing we can do about it as such. And then at the same time, as Andrea mentioned, that the MDR requires a risk-based approach, and it means that the risks need to be updated regularly over the whole product life cycle. For example, there are periodic safety update reports and various many other things that need to be taken into account. So it's a changing thing all the time, especially what comes to risks. Now let's see about the traceability, which is important. It is quite clearly stated that these things need to be in place to kind of see that for risks that need to be mitigated, there needs to be risk control measures and verification or some sort of a assurance that they are done. Now, what the MDR and IVDR tell about post-market surveillance is that these things that come along during the product life cycle, they also need to be taken into account, and they actually need to be traced to risks. For example, complaints, incidents, adverse events, so forth. They all might affect risks, and one needs to really show a clear evidence that they have been taken into account in risk management. And what's also important is that typically it's a good practice to kind of state that to at least to what aspect of the product certain risks are assessed. And this can also be brought into more granular level. It is not clearly required, or the granularity is not really defined very clearly in regulations. But it's a very good practice to go very detailed into the see that what requirements or functions or components or so forth of the product are actually assessed to get a full picture if we are covering everything. And this arrow here emphasizes the fact that the risk mitigation actions need to be seen that they are effective and real. And also this kind of a circle here depicts that risk control measures also need to be assessed for potential new risks. And this comes really evident with the cybersecurity now, that needs to be also taken into account, that, for example, there might be cybersecurity risk control measures that impact the safety and vice versa. And this is really something that is required to do. And just to mention that, however, in the medical device IVD industry, it seems that the cybersecurity risks can be handled with the same traditional way as for the safety. So we can use the same methodology and scoring and everything, and you will see it right in a minute. Unlike in the automotive or industrial automation, even the terminology for the cybersecurity and safety is really different, and they typically then result in different processes, or at least different sheets or methodologies. All right. So the conclusion is that the risk management is really sort of naturally connected to almost everything in the technical file. So risk management here is in the center. But what is then the trick to put it really into the core of practices? And we would say that instead of having separated Excel-based approach, it would be very good to connect it for real and make it live. And how to do that is to digitalize, break things into objects, connect them and really trace them, establish a process with the workflows and electronic signatures, and to make it usable is also one thing that is required. If you have hundreds of risks, then if it's not usable, nobody will do that. Nobody will want to update the risks as they are supposed to be done. All right. So now let's look at an example solution based on those principles and some use cases with that. And for that, I'll take the Polarion tool as an example, and we have defined some things here. And to get us moving, actually we can then come back to this a bit later. But then to get us moving, we have prepared some use cases, and they are quite intense, and I have some ready-made links here to guide me through this. And so let's now first look at this kind of a risk sheet, which is very similar to traditional Excel and the things that we saw earlier in the PowerPoint. So here we have different risks as rows in the table. And if we now, for example, look at this row here, we see that there is something called assessed item here, which is a requirement, the system requirement. I can tell that by the icon here, and it's a reference to the item, but it's also a link at the same time to the actual item. I can show it here. So it is an item in the database of Polarion. So it is a system requirement, and it's a real object with a workflow and everything, and it's there, and we just refer to that directly in the table. So I'll just actually open up some other views here to help us to see what's going on here, and to see that this line here, which is highlighted in the table, there are some content defined of the risk, and then we have the risk assessment here, post risk assessment, and then we have something here which is a risk control measures. And to show this kind of a traceability graph reveals that in the background there really are objects everywhere. So this is our risk, the line in the Excel, and this here is the assessed item where we kind of start the analysis. And then these here are the mitigating actions, or this is actually a requirement, another requirement which follows from the risk assessment. And then this is a task, and they also have verifying tests. The verifying tests are actually not shown here in this table, but yes, these are the items here. And on top of the if we open just a bit more views to see what's going on here in the system, we can also see that this is another view of the data structure that I showed earlier in a graph. So this is now a tree view of the same thing. So first we have the assessed item here as a requirement, then we have the risk, which was the line in the sheet, and then we have the mitigations here and the test cases underneath. But if we look at this requirement here, we saw that it's an object here in the database, but at the same time it is also part of a document, or it can be. It doesn't have to be, but it can be. In this system, it's very useful to define, for example, requirements in a document-like manner, and we can see that it's the actual part of the document is an individual object in Polarion, and we can see that, well, this is a very normal-looking document, and this is actually the process part that we talked about. So, for example, these requirements have undergone a review process. They have been reviewed and approved. The whole document actually has been approved, and then these actual items here then are also going through a workflow. So to highlight this, that so actually what we are now looking at is something like this. So we have a document which is broken down into actual elements in the database. And what's nice is that we can build a traceability look like this, where there are a chain of certain documents and traces between the actual parts of the document. And at the same time, we also saw that we have the Risksheet, and now this is an animation to show to recap how the data structure works with this kind of a sheet. So first we start with the element or requirement to assess. Then we have the risk assessment, which is now these things here in the table, and then possibly we talk about this a bit later. Maybe a post-market surveillance event, which is now empty here in the example. But then we have the mitigating requirements and tasks. This is a requirement here, and then also in the data structure are the verifying tests. And if you look at the kind of the whole picture, well, this is kind of the connection to the trace graph that you saw earlier. All right, so that was the basic explanation of what's going on here, but then let's look at some of the use cases as well. I'll just close these to get some room here. And let's now look at the second use case, how to work with the sheet. So let's pretend that we are working with this requirement adjusting basal dose patterns, and let's open also this traceability graph that you would see then what's going on there in the data structure behind. So we start with this (639), which is here, this one here, and we see that, no, actually this is the wrong one. No, this one, sorry. And let's now see that, okay, it has currently one risk there, as the sheet also shows that there's one risk here, one line of assessment here. So very typical thing is that, well, when we have defined or found a hazardous situation with some certain sequence of events, there would be multiple harms related to this one thing. So let's add a new harm. Instead of just being, the patient getting unconscious, let's say that there's a potential of having situation which results in coma for the patient. And this system already knows that this has been, there are some traditional, kind of a library of these harms, and they are already defined with some severity, so you don't have to think about the severity here. You just add the harm, and then, as you can see, the hazardous situation already has, for the first risk, it already has the P1 probability. So now let's just think of the P2 for the coma incident. And let's say that it's unlikely. And then we result in having a risk mitigation. So we need to do something about it. And if we go further in the sheet, well, let's now look at the risk control measure. Well, we need to do something about it. I'm just writing something here, but then let's add a new, let's say a task that one needs to, for example, do something, for example, in a whatever device manual or something, and let's call it a task. And we can add a new task here just by writing it here, and this system identifies that it's a new one. And if we save this, we get the new risk, and we get the new risk mitigation action here. And if we look at the data structure, what happened in the background while I was just editing the sheet there quite easily, is that the data structure is actually formed in the background. So now we got a new risk here, and actually a new mitigation also for that risk in the background. So I think that was the that use case. And let's now look at some change control things, because it was really evident that there will be changes quite often in the risk management. So if we now look at this item, and I will just open the graph again to highlight the actual item that we are looking at. So we have this kind of a data structure there existing. So we already have something there. We have a risk assessing this requirement, bolus dose delivery errors, and we have these two mitigations there with their tests. And if we look at this one here from the sheet, we get it from here. It's this one. I hope I choose the right one. Yes, I did. So we have them here, and what if there now is change to this requirement? We already have this here in the sheet, but what if there's change? So let's make a change here in this particular requirement. Of course, there could be a change request and so forth coming first, but let's now cut some corners and do some changes here. So let's have a new version of this, and let's do some kind of a change here, just artificial whatever. But when I do that, I can save that as a suspect. What happens in the data structure is that the first link in the structure becomes something which is called suspect. We see that from this dotted line here. It means that in the system this risk becomes suspect, and we can also see the suspects quite easily by just listing all the suspect items which are there in our project. And here we see that okay, there's something change coming to the risk, and we need to do something about it. So I'm just checking out what I was supposed to do. Yeah, so when we need to change this, of course, now the status says that it's there are controls in progress. But if there's a change here, of course, I need to, well, put it back to assessing. I need to assess that, reassess, taking the changes from the requirement into account, and then I can just clear the suspect link from here, saying, okay, I handled that one. And when we go back to the sheet and do a refresh there, well, for example, the owner of the risk could have done that in the background. But once we come back to this sheet, we see that, well, which of the risks are now back in assessing, and we can even go and filter based on the, if I get to the button here, so let's now only select the ones that are assessing in assessing status. So now I can clearly see that I need to do something about this particular risk line. So I can always, filter this sheet very effectively and only see the ones that they are really in the process. So, and to go on, I could also say that, well, because of some changes, I need to do some changes in the assessments and whatever, or I can say that, well, I need to change this requirement, which was the original mitigation action. I need to do something there, some changes again, so the change goes on, and let's say that, well, it is not done, but then we need to redo that, issue a change here, and then save that as a suspect as well. And what follows is that we get the resulting test case, which is here linked. It now gets the suspect. And if we see the change propagation here in this graph, just to have a refresh on that, we see that, well, now this last link is the suspect link here, and we need to also to update the corresponding test case. So we just don't have to go through all the sheet just to find the particular changes in these structures. But once everything is an object here and they all work individually, they have a workflow, then the changes are propagated through those links, and everything is live here. So you just don't need to worry about the whole table being correct, because you have only changed the ones that are really impacted of the changes. Okay, let's now see then the maybe the interesting part, that what is the post-market surveillance influence on the risk management. And we talked about that earlier, but how to take that into account in real. So for example, let's now actually, I could open that again without any filtering, just to start clean. And I was supposed to work with this one, adjusting basal dose patterns. And let's assume that there is a complaint, well, coming from the some channel, and it has been entered into this system as well, either manually or with some integration to whatever post-market surveillance system. And let's say that, okay, I need to refresh or assess its influence on this particular thing here. And I can just go here and search for complaint, and when we have the complaint in the system, I can just add the one that I want to this item here and save. Well, in this case it also affects the other particular risk assessment here regarding the same sequence of events. So let's do that. And then based on this complaint, for example, we see that well basal dose pattern really seems to be difficult to adjust. So yeah, maybe the probability of the hazardous situation is not remote, but it's occasional, or it's even frequent. Well, which means that well, we need to do something here. We need to change add some risk mitigation also for this risk. So this is the kind of change that the post-market surveillance can have on the risks, and especially their assessment. Well, then I think we can see about this last use case, which concerns the cybersecurity risks together with safety. And again, let's start with this risk sheet here, and we have here one cybersecurity related risk here. And I once again open the traceability graph to see to kind of show clearly what's happening there. So to start with, we have this kind of a situation that there is a element, user management and configuration, that has been assessed with this risk, and there has been a risk mitigation because of that. And this risk mitigation already has some tests and so forth. So it is here, and it has been approved. There are some controls in progress, but then on the other hand, this new requirement, so let's assume that we would have added that just recently. So this risk also this new requirement also needs to be assessed in terms of safety. So let's do that. Let's put it there somewhere in the sheet here. So let's just add here a new assessed item, and let's choose the strong authentication requirement, and let's say that there is a potential misuse of that. And let's say that well, user cannot change the dosage because of not getting authenticated or something. Well, just something. And it is a safety related thing, right? And then there can be another harm because of that. Just something, I don't know. And then if that is something that eventually needs a risk mitigation action again, well, we can add let's say a new task here. Just to have something here in the system, and so that you can see that how the traceability of the whole thing is affected by these changes here, and we get really a chain of requirements or risks. So here's the first risk mitigation, and then it's assessed of another risk, and then thus there is mitigation also for that. Right. So that was our almost last use case, maybe the last of the last, is that it's very practical also to kind of see and notice that everything that is done here, it is tracked in the whole history of Polarion system. And if I, for example, want to see that what has been now changed during this session, I can open a document where all the risks are gathered and what has been done with the actual risk items. So I can do a change comparison between a baseline that I actually did just before the demo and this present moment, and see that what has been changed. And if I look at the different work items, we can see that these changes have been done. So for example, these particular risks didn't exist before our session, so they're brand new. And it's also possible to now with the some new nice features on this Risksheet, it's also possible to see some changes here also on the sheet, actually on the sheet. So if I just say that we compare to the version that was existing before we started, well, we see that what actually has been changed in the sheet. For example, these things highlighted in yellow have been changed during the session. So it also sees that, okay, there has been some changes in the mitigation actions and so forth. All right, so that concludes our demo part. But how to then to get the benefits of this kind of a solution? Well, we saw that it's very easy to connect everything with Polarion, because it's really all needed processes that are there in one, and you can do a lot of things with that. We didn't see them all, but if then and this really can result in tremendous benefits. For example, there are some figures that you can save as much as 80% in traceability management and data reuse. Or one German company has said that they have been able to reduce their time to market by staggering 40% with this kind of an approach. But then, of course, there are already existing systems and things in place. So how to make use of those? So you can, yes, you can connect to existing systems via different integrations. For example, if there is Jira in use for some of these things, then you can connect to Polarion with a connector and do the things that are mostly related to the risk management here in Polarion, and then do the epics and stories and work management as you've done with Jira. So how in practice? So what I failed to say earlier is that Polarion is very, very configurable. So the process that we saw today is just an example. Everything can be tweaked, and for example, you can make a, let's say, a bit simpler version of the risk management process, saying that, for example, there's a risk control measure that is tracked in Polarion, and that then is connected to something else in, for example, Jira or other system. And likewise for the this kind of a PMS event, of course, there probably is some sort of a post-market surveillance ticketing system or something that can be also integrated, and the information can be brought here manually or automatically.